fun so far. I've been fascinated with science, technology, and engineering and mathematics since I was a kid, and STEM subjects continue to be themes through my 2 careers as a DJ and as an ecologist, and even in my hobbies. And my message today that I want to get across to you is that your inspiration to engage in STEM disciplines can come from many different things. And if you choose to stick with STEM studies and pursue a STEM career, you're well positioned to make a comfortable living while doing important and rewarding work that improves our world. I'm not exactly sure which button to press. Just down the laneway from the house I grew up in was a small marsh, and each spring, immediately after the ice went out in the spring, wood frogs would miraculously appear in the marsh to spawn. I've always loved frogs. I spent all kinds of hours down there catching them and trying to learn about them. And one of the earliest sort of scientific curiosities I remember was wondering about how these animals can emerge after this long, cold winter, ready to spawn. And I learned that when temperatures get cold, these animals actually pump natural antifreezes like urea and glucose into their blood and tissues, which lowers their freezing point so they don't turn into frogsicles. In my high school days, my dad often took me fishing for smallmouth bass, and one of our favorite lures was the Rapala shad rap. And when the fishing was slow, I'd sit in the boat and contemplate stuff. Like, why balsa wood as the body material? How do they shape each lure so perfectly? Is there a trade-off between hook set performance and wiggling action that had to be optimized? Could other shapes of that plastic flange at the front end of the lure give better diving or swimming action to the lure? So scientists and engineers don't just create medical interventions and space probes and theories about nature. Think about any device you use, and it'll soon become obvious that scientists and engineers had a hand in designing and building it. This is the bike I rode in the 2015 Muskoka Ironman race. I was working on my PhD at the time, and I needed to get away from the computer, so I did some training on the weekends. This machine is made of ultralight and strong carbon fiber. It puts the rider's body in a position that trades off a bit of power for an aerodynamic position that's ideal for a race in which you're not allowed to follow in the slipstream of another racer. You can easily spend $7,500, $10,000 on a bike like this, and revenue from the sale of these machines does trickle down to support people working in material science, developers of software for technical design, mechanical engineers, and even scientists working in biomechanics. People with STEM skills are in demand, and they're paid as talent, not as labor. I can twist a knob on my DJ mixer back there and filter out certain frequencies, which sounds really cool when you're mixing out from one track into another. I can put my hand on the platter and move it back and forth, you know, in that motion you all associate DJs with, and that advances and pulls back the audio signal past the cue point. It allows you to make that sound that's no scratching that all the good, great DJs do. Given some skills with coding, I can program my own effects into any button or dial on this mixer. And when you add your own creativity and ingenuity into a tech device like this, what you end up with is a little bit of wow. So I just want to end with a little story from my PhD work in boreal ecology. I've been to a lot of different universities. I started at Guelph, went to Trent, finished at Laurentian. The Dorset Environmental Science Centre has been sampling benthic invertebrates and water chemistry in 19 lakes since 1993. And if you're not aware of benthic invertebrates they're little creepy crawlies that live in the bottom sediments, and they're really great indicators of aquatic ecosystem condition. So anyways, I looked through the Science Center's data set using a graphical interface for the statistical programming language that's known as R. And after learning R's syntax, what used to take me weeks or months in an Excel spreadsheet, I could do in minutes. So in my PhD project, I built hundreds of statistical models, created thousands of graphs, and compiled manuscript-ready summary tables using relatively simple coding scripts. So I wanted to make a little plug for coding. Having a bit of coding know-how will allow you to develop and adapt available tech to your own needs. It makes your work easier, more efficient, and also more rewarding. So anyways, getting back to the lake data set, I noticed that calcium was declining in 13 of the 19 lakes. And what I'm showing here is a scatter plot matrix. So on the horizontal axis, we've got year on the bottom. On the vertical axis, or the y-axis, we've got calcium concentration in lake water. And each of the squares here is a pane that represents a different lake. And you can see as you move to the right, most of the lines go down. Calcium is declining in most of the lakes. Amphipods have a high demand for calcium because they're calcified exoskeleton, which they have to actually cast off each time they molt and grow. So according to laboratory studies, they start to suffer metabolic stress when calcium concentrations fall below about 5 milligrams per liter, which is the case for most of the lakes around here and in Muskoka. So I mined the long-term data set for any evidence of effects on amphipod abundance. And lo and behold, the number of amphipods is going down in 13 to 19 lakes. I now have a paper in revision with a renowned scientific journal, the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences, in which some colleagues and I actually investigate the association between calcium and declining amphipod abundance. And we report that losing amphipods might actually have a pretty significant effect on lake food webs. So combining your passions for science, technology, engineering, and math can make for a very rewarding life. And if you're a curious person, do stick with STEM because you're never going to run out of questions. And I'm just going to show you one silly thing with my phone here before I go.
Doctor? Doctor?
I'm a doctor.
I don't need no doctor, 'cause I know what's ailing me.
I'm also a surgeon.
Go across the street and get Dr. Brown.
Medicine is merely a hobby with me.
I told the witch doctor I was in love with.
Thank you.